Okay, so in this video we're going to talk about walking the California Missions Trail from San Francisco to Petaluma. Um, and I'm making this video now because I recently finished roughly the last leg of the journey, walking from Petaluma to Novato. So I can say for sure that I've walked every step of the journey. And although in actuality, I did walk from north to south, but because people often do make this journey going from south to north, that's how this video is going to be explained. So you start off here at Mission San Francisco de Assisi, um, which is at the intersection of Dolores and 16th Street in San Francisco. Um, Going north, there's different ways you can go north. If you're just trying to get to the Golden Gate Bridge, then it is possible to follow the route in the California Missions Trail. Let's see, they should have... Whoops. Okay, maybe we just want the interactive map. Okay, yeah. So if you're just trying to go from from the Mission to the bridge, the California Missions Trail has their route. But I don't consider this to be... the route worth taking if you're on a pilgrimage. Because you would be missing the Cathedral of St. Mary the Assumption, which is one of the great cathedrals of San Francisco. Or sorry, no, the great Cathedral of San Francisco. There's only one cathedral, there is only one Catholic cathedral in the city. And that's where I recommend going. Another place to consider is the Shrine of... should be around here. Let's turn off terrain for a second. The Shrine of St. Francis. And that's located... Ah, there it is. Right, the National Shrine of St. Francis of Assisi. So that's located on Columbus and Vallejo. That is a place worth going to in the city. Again, it's a bit off the beaten path, but in terms of the pilgrimage trail, but it is a place worth going to. So my advice going from the cathedral would be to head up north on Dolores, and then this area of raised land here is the San Francisco Mint, which is a great building. You don't go into it, but it looks great. And that's a landmark so that you kind of know where you are. This area here is a hill. Part of the reason the mission is where it is because there's all these hills to the west of the mission that sort of block the foggy and cold air. And so that's one of the reasons why the Native Americans were living there. All of the missions are sort of founded at the area where there was just the greatest concentration of Native Americans already living there as a way of converting them. So the mission is probably one of the warmest places in San Francisco. That's one of the reasons as well why the Native Americans were living there. So there are hills, and it's best after going up Dolores to then follow Market Street. If you want to go directly to the cathedral, my recommendation would be to take Market Street and then to take Gough. It is all possible also to, visit City Hall or to look at City Hall from afar. From there, I do make journeys out on, let's see, it would be California Street, just to visit Portsmouth Square and then to head over to the Shrine of St. Francis of Assisi. But if that's too far, or if the shrine is closed, then the other option would be, I think, going towards the bridge from the cathedral. Normally I would head to St. Dominic's. And of course Japantown is right in between the cathedral and St. Dominic's. So that is a place worth visiting. And then from there, I think Clay Street is one of the streets that's closed to outside traffic. So only people who live along Clay Street can drive along it. So this is the street you want to walk along to get to Arguello, and then that'll get you into the Presidio. But going from where the shrine is, probably, honestly, I haven't walked Columbus, but I would say Columbus is probably easy enough to walk. I have biked from where Aquatic Cove is. So there are places to walk here all along Aquatic Cove, and that would take you out to the coastline, and then you can follow that to the marina. All of this is flat. In that particular case, then you would follow it. Then you'd have to here would be, I think, the path to get up to elevation, and then that would take you towards the south end of the Golden Gate Bridge. So this is at elevation here, coming in from Arguello, walking. I actually haven't walked Arguello Boulevard. Normally when I'm going, let's see now. Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. So normally when I would take Clay Street, I would then take Presidio Boulevard, and then walk Lover's Lane. Again, normally I'm going north to south, but south to north it's going to be easier to do this because you'll be going downhill. It's basically a straight line path downhill. There's no cars, and you continue here until you get to the main parade lawn. So this is where the original fort was that the Spanish were living in the Presidio. My guess is that the original fort was over here, but I'm not certain exactly where the original Spanish fort was. And then, of course, from there you would go along the edge of the cemetery and then follow around the bowl, just so you don't drop too far down. Because once you're on the hill, you want to proceed up the hill slowly until you get to the south end of the Golden Gate Bridge. Historically, this actually used to be Under the Spanish, this was the citadel of the fort. They had a basically at the very point of the cliff, they had a number of gun emplacements. But what ended up happening was after the United States took over California from the Mexicans, the decision was made to dynamite the cliff down to the water line in order to build a fort at close to the water line in order to skip the artillery shells across it. So that's one of the reasons why Fort Point is actually at more or less the water line. So the site has been heavily modified since the days of the Spanish. From here, of course, you cross the Golden Gate Bridge and arrive at the north side. So there's a rest area with bathrooms and water fountains. And from the rest area, you take a passageway under the bridge. And then that takes you to a parking lot here. And then there's a descent down Conselman Road that slowly takes you to the down to the bay itself. From there, getting into Sausalito, you basically follow see, I think the easiest would probably be Center Road, I think, and then it's slowly you slowly make your way up East Road. There's no sidewalk here. I think once, when you're on here, you're on a multi-use path. As soon as you get over here, there's no sidewalk. You're basically just walking by the side of the road, but there's not that much traffic. So, you just have to keep an eye out for cars. And this is probably the beginning of the point where it's like, you basically need to be able-bodied. You probably can't take children with you, and if you're elderly, you're gonna, run into trouble. But, as long as you're able-bodied and you can keep your head on a swivel to look for traffic, you should be fine to walk the route. Yeah, so there's no sidewalks here. Once you get up to East Road, I believe there's I think over here, there's a trail that begins by the side of the road. And you just kind of continue following it slowly up and up. Now, this portion here, between where East Road joins Alexander Avenue, and then where Sausalito itself begins, everything gets incredibly tight. So, basically, in this particular narrow bit, you're essentially walking by the side of the road. There's no sidewalk. The cars, they're going to pass you, but basically just be aware that you're going to be maybe 3 feet, 4 feet away from cars moving at 30 or 40 miles an hour. Now, it's not for too long, but that's something to be aware of. Once you get past that, though, there is a sidewalk that starts up again. And then from here, you can make your way down Alexander Avenue and into Sausalito itself. It is possible to go to Swedes Beach and then walk along. There should be a boardwalk here that's accessible to the public. There's sidewalk here, so it's all pretty regular. Once you get to here, this dotted line here indicates a staircase. So it is possible to, well, actually, yeah, so it is possible to go up to Harrison Avenue, and then there's no sidewalks here, but it's possible to go to St. Mary Star of the Sea. Now, this is the first Catholic church on the journey northward. It's not indicated on the California Missions Trail map, but that's your first Catholic church. That said, it's at the top of the hill, and the church, all the times I've been to it over the past, I think, 3 years or so, it's just not open during the day. So, whether you decide to go there or not, it is something to consider. These streets don't have sidewalks. And are very steep. It's a very steep hill. And at the top of the hill, there's no view either. If you get to the top of the hill, the trees are such that Sausalito, it's hard to move around on the hills because if you're on the hill, you can't see well other areas on the hill or off the hill. Everything can get quite tricky in terms of trying to figure out where you are. In addition to the fact that there's no sidewalks. So continuing on the journey though, things are pretty easy going north. Effectively, there is a sidewalk along Bridgeway, and this is basically from where the ferry terminal is here in Sausalito. This is where the old rail line used to run. So you basically follow the rail line, which is today a walking path, and that takes you northward. Now you can decide where exactly to go. For example, over here, if you continue following Bridgeway, there is a sidewalk, although it is possible to follow this path here and not walk up the hill, and that will take you to the Bay Model. That being said, however, there's no... these streets here, there's no sidewalk. So you kind of... There's no sidewalk, and it's not necessarily well marked out where you're going to be. So sometimes, if you're trying to move quickly, I do think it's easier to just take Bridgeway, because then you're going straight, you're on the sidewalk, and you have just a better idea of where you are. Also, this particular hill is not very steep. From Bridgeway, we pass by... we pass by Waldo Point. And here is where the Mill Valley Sausalito path begins. This is probably one of the best places along the whole route. It's a multi-use walking path, and there's just no traffic to worry about. You walk under the 101 freeway. You take the bridges over the creek, as well as the creek over here. This particular creek, Arroyo Cordamadera del Presidio, this is the creek that leads to... this is the creek that was used by the Spanish at the Presidio to do logging. Further up the creek, I think here, at this particular junction of water, this is about where they figure that the Native American village was, in Mill Valley, and the birthplace for Chief Marin. But yeah, continuing along the path, basically, it's a pretty straight walking path, and it continues all the way until Vasco Court. So that's where it ends. This dotted line here is the area that used to be part of the rail line that goes to the closed tunnel. And there is no plan to reopen the tunnel. In theory, if Mill Valley and Corte Madera and the county of Marin had, millions of dollars to try to fix the tunnel, they could attempt to do so, but I mean, we're talking over $50 million, and I don't think it would be. Long story short, this isn't something that should concern us, just because it's infrastructure that doesn't exist. So as far as we're concerned, this is a dead end right now. Getting over the hill, there's a number of options. The main option would be, I think, here, at this junction. If you're going by bicycle, you would take this route here on Lomita, and then follow this path here along the side of Horse Hill. And that would take you to Casa Buena Drive. There's no sidewalk here, and that basically takes you over the hill. The other route is at Vasco Court to follow Underhill, and then here at Coach Road, there's a trail that connects to Sausalito Street, and that takes you over the hill. Now, that said, there's a sidewalk here on the Mill Valley side. This area here is unpaved. Sausalito Street, there's no sidewalk. So you have to keep a lookout for cars, you have to be aware of things, but as long as you are aware of things, you can safely walk Sausalito Street. The only other option, there's other ways to get up the hill, but one would have to go. There is a trail, I think the Bob Migda Trail, that goes from Coach Road to the summit of Camino Alto. From there, it's possible to walk along the side of Camino Alto, which is a very well-trafficked route. Like, I don't know how much people would want to do this and then pick up the trail here. That said, you can pick up the trail here, and then that would take you to the lower Summit Fire Road. And then one would begin just slowly descending the hills. Again, there's no sidewalk here, and you have to take Redwood Avenue, and then you take the hill path down. So the hill path, either way, you do end up going, up and over the hill. I don't recommend that I don't recommend that particular route just because there's the issues with having to cross the main most heavily trafficked route, and then beyond that, there's also the question of just, how far up the hill do you want to go? I will say here at this point that you do have the church over here in Mill Valley, Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church. So that can be accessed. I mean, it can be accessed pretty easily from Miller. And hypothetically, it is possible from there, and I have walked the route along Buena Vista. And this is, again, one of those things where I think around here or so, I think this is about where the sidewalk ends, and then it's possible to take Buena Vista, Manor, Del Casa, and then Fairway. From Fairway, there is a path that goes up to Escalon Fire Road. And then it's possible to take Escalon to here, and then to take Lower Summit. That's the only condition I would say where it does make sense to follow that route to cross the hill. So from Corte Madera, depending on the route you took over the hill, you're going to be in, any position along Tamalpais Drive. There's a lot of ways to move through Corte Madera. If you're going by bike and you're not trying to visit the churches, then you can take Tamil Vista Boulevard. And that's a pretty good route. But if you are trying to visit the churches, then it makes sense to go from downtown and then to follow I think here to Williams, and then I think this route here, and that takes you to St. Patrick's Church. St. Patrick's Church, I think both St. Patrick's Church and Our Lady of Mount Carmel are churches that have doors that are open to the public, just on a regular basis. So that is something, if you want to go in there and pray, you can. But yeah, that route, depending on where you are, there's different routes that will take you up to where the mission is. So from St. Patrick's Church, the easiest is to follow then along Magnolia Avenue. There's a multi-use path by the side of Magnolia Avenue. Then there's, of course, a bridge that goes by here and then takes you to Bon Air Road, and then to St. Sebastian's Church and Marin Catholic. From St. Sebastian's, you can follow the route that we took with the National Eucharistic Pilgrimage, going up and over Wolf Grade, and then following D Street, and that will take you to Mission San Rafael Archangel. However, if you decided to go on the bike route, Tamil Vista, then the way you would want to go, the easiest would be to take Wernham and then Redwood Highway, and then that would take you to the Cal Park Hill pathway, and also Larkspur Landing. I'll also say here as well, if you're going to go by ferry, so it is possible, it's sort of, I guess you could say, the Chief Marin route would be to go by ferry. That is, he would have gone, obviously, by a reed boat from Mission Bay, which would have been, Mission Bay would have been, roughly here, where the, kind of around where the Giants baseball stadium is. But, if you want to go on that route, it is possible to walk, basically walk Mission Dolores to Market to the ferry building, and then just get on the ferry. And the ferry will just take you directly to Larkspur. From Larkspur, again, you take the Cal Park Hill pathway. That takes you through the tunnel, through this hill, so you don't have to walk up it. And then from there, you're on Anderson. There's a series, and then you have the choice of either taking the smart trail, so that would take you off-road onto a multi-use pathway, or just walking the sidewalk along Anderson Drive. Both are going to take you in roughly the same direction. I will say here, at this bend here, I believe this is roughly the Embarcadero for the mission. So this is the place that Chief Marin would have disembarked the boat. And then I believe this road would have continued in a straight line, I think, all the way to the mission. But I could be wrong on that, because it could also be that this one might be where the Embarcadero was. So Embarcadero in Spanish just means, place of embarkation, place to get on and off the boat. It's either one or the other, but that is one of the reasons why these streets are at the angle they are, because they do relate directly to the mission. So it's one of these bends here would have been the place, but maybe it would have been this one. Because generally speaking, for the mission, there's usually a straight line road that comes off of the mission itself. In either case, though, you arrive at Mission San Rafael. Unlike Mission San Francisco, which is one of the best, Mission San Francisco is the best preserved mission of all the missions. Mission San Rafael Archangel is entirely and completely rebuilt. Everything is built off of, the reconstruction is based off of what we think that the mission looked like, with a number of modifications. I will say of the chapel there, I think it was William Randolph Hearst was one of the major donors to the chapel. Going north from the mission, it's a bit simpler. You have the choice of taking the SMART trail or walking on the sidewalk on Lincoln Avenue. I recommend the SMART trail just because once you're on it, there's no interruptions from traffic. Although that said, you don't have the best view. And even if you do make a choice here, they do, at the top of the hill, there is a connection. There's two connections, so, if you do choose one or the other, you can switch at the top of the hill. That said, going down, Los Ranchitos Road, there's no sidewalk. So, you basically have to walk in the bike path. If you take the trail here, going south to north, you're going downhill on this section. This is a very steep section. This is something where if I was on a bike, honestly, it's almost too steep to be able to just ride down on a bike. So that is something to keep in mind here. But if you're going south to north, even though it's steep, it should be okay to walk. That takes you down to Marydale Road, and then you cut over on North San Pedro Road, and in order to pick up the Smart Trail again. Although actually, I think at this point, actually, you want to go... I think here, yeah, you want to switch to Los Ranchitos Road. And I do believe that there is a sidewalk here. Once you're at Northgate, there is a sidewalk and there is a cycling path along the whole side of the road here. Mount Olivet Cemetery. This is the place where Father Amaros, who was the priest at Mission San Rafael, is buried. So that is something to know regarding this particular location. From here, it's the best path is usually Las Galinas, and over here is St. Isabella's Church. So it's possible to just... There is a sidewalk by the side of the parkway, or it's possible to backtrack a bit and then take Arias to Trinity Way, also to access the church. Personally, the first time I was on a bicycle, I think I wasn't able to get onto this particular street. And so I would recommend walking the parkway just so that you just don't get lost along the way. There's a water fountain here in Arbor Park. Following now on Las Galinas. Let's see. So there is, if you follow, you have to decide at this point if you want to just go over the hill or not. If you just follow Las Galinas, you'll walk over the hill. It's not the steepest hill, but if you're on a bike, you would want to go around. And for going around, your choice would be to follow the parkway, then Los Gamos Road, and then as it turns into Los Gamos Drive, you pass by the Marin YMCA, and then from here take Luce Valley Road. At this point, both paths turn into just Las Galinas, and that takes you to Miller Creek Road. From here, yes, it is possible to go to St. Vincent. However, the church here isn't open. There's no bike path on St. Vincent Drive, and there's no walking path. You would just have to keep your head on a swivel to make sure you don't get, run over. That said, traffic is pretty light, but this is one of those journeys where it's like, do you really want to go over, make a freeway, make a crossing over the freeway, and then walk to a church that just isn't open, except on Sundays and whenever the mass hours are. So that is something to think about. Generally speaking, I don't make that journey. From here is where there is a trail, um, or sorry, a multi-use path. So it is paved, and and it takes you kind of as a basically not a frontage road, but it fulfills the same function. And that takes you, by the side of 101. From there, you're at Alameda del Prado. There's no sidewalk here. From this point on, basically you're walking along the side of the road. And honestly, when I was walking south, north to south, I was walking along the eastern side of the road. And I would say that the eastern side, that there is a more complete I'm not going to call it a trail because it isn't maintained. It's just like an area of dirt, maybe 2 feet wide from between where the curb side of the road is to where the fence is for the highway. But basically, there is a place to walk. It's not maintained. It's not paved. There's weeds everywhere. There's sections that are overgrown. You have to be willing to just walk through the foliage. But that will take you along Alameda del Prado until you get to, I think, maybe it's somewhere over here where the sidewalk starts up again. Once the sidewalk starts up again, then, it's easier to walk. That takes you to Ignacio, then to Enfrente Boulevard, all sidewalks here, and then to Entrada Drive. From here, there is the another multi-use path that takes you into Novato. South Novato Boulevard, the place to walk, I believe there's a walking path on this side of the road. However, on the other side is St. Anthony's Catholic Church. So, this is also a church where the doors aren't open except during mass hours. As far as I know, during the times I've walked and biked the route, it just isn't open. From here you take South Novato Boulevard, which does have, I think, a sidewalk, although here is where I think there's a multi-use path that it is also possible to take. I think, yeah, definitely from Roland onward, there's definitely a sidewalk on South Novato Boulevard. That takes you up into Novato itself. Then there's the choice of, which way to go. It's possible to take Diablo Avenue and then Redwood Boulevard, and that'll take you into downtown Novato. The other possibility is to take Novato Boulevard. There should be a walking path by the side of Novato Boulevard, and then that goes to Our Lady of Loretto Church. I've never actually been in that church, but it is a place that does exist. And I think along here, I've biked along this route, but I haven't actually walked along Grant Avenue. So I don't remember if there's a sidewalk along the entire route. I think there is, but anyway. So from there, though, I mean, you basically come out again on Grant, and you'll be in downtown Novato. Um, from there, you basically just follow Redwood Boulevard up to the Novato San Marin Smart Station. There should be, I think, here from the... I think there's... From where the Trader Joe's is onward, I think they're still rebuilding the sidewalk. And then from here, there should be a smart path that goes underneath this particular interchange. So that'll take you under by the side of where the train line is. From there, you continue along Redwood Boulevard. I think there's a sidewalk here at the beginning of it, but afterwards you're basically just walking along the side of the road where the bike path is. And you kind of continue just walking the frontage road until you get to Olimpali. After that, you do get a multi-use trail that'll take you to San Antonio Road. This is the interchange for the dump. From here, though, it's San Antonio Road. You're back walking the frontage road. And that'll take you across the bridge here. And then... yeah, basically it's just this... this road here, which then leads to the pathway that goes under 101. So this is nice because it's a place that you know, it's just pedestrians and cyclists, and you're getting off the road. After that, you're on Petaluma Boulevard South, and you're walking the frontage road again. There's a hill here. It can be a pretty brutal hill on a bike. It's going to be, I think, it's harder going south to north than it is going north to south. So that is something I think to be aware of. But in general, you're just walking the frontage road until you get over here. Once you get over here, then you're walking Petaluma Boulevard South, but you're walking the section that's heavily, more heavily trafficked, because this is the route people are using to go from the city to get onto the 101 freeway. So there is a crossing, there is a crosswalk and a light here, so you can make this crossing, but you know, the cars are something to be aware of, and things can get pretty tight here. You're basically walking by the side of the front, by the side of the road. And it's just one of those things where you have to try as much as possible to just stay off the road. And, you know, to the extent possible, the cars will swerve out of the way a little bit to give you room if they're capable of doing so. That is one of the things with a heavily trafficked route. If the cars can't move out of your way in order to give you room, you know, they might slow down a bit, but they're just going to be passing you the way they're passing you. From here, it's only after going under 101 again that the sidewalk starts up again. This is where the town of Petaluma itself, where the borders are for the city. Pretty much just proceed along Petaluma Boulevard south. And, you know, you can pick any one of these roads here to go to get to, you know, 6th Street, and then, you know, here is St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church. This is the main downtown parish for Petaluma. And that'll take you in. Crossing Petaluma, basically you kind of have to decide where it is you're going. If you're trying to get just the nearest pedestrian crossing, then what you want is the D Street Bridge. From there, I guess I'll just say it. It's right now, I don't think that there is a safe way to get from Petaluma to Sonoma walking. There are, every year, maybe about 50 people, I think, who decide that they're going to walk along Frates Road, and then Old Adobe Road, and then Stage Gulch Road, and then, you know, into Telemec, and then Arnold Drive and Livonia Road, and then, you know, from there, then you're in Sonoma, and there's a whole system of pathways that'll take you in to where Mission San Francisco Solano is. However, this route here, 116, is very unsafe. I've never walked it. I don't recommend walking it. Right now, the way it works is that you have people, it's the connection point between Napa and the 101 corridor. People coming up from San Francisco who want to go to the wineries in Napa are going to use this route. And it is very, very, very well trafficked. I don't recommend walking it because I don't recommend anyone walking along a route where they're going to be 3 feet away from cars moving at 50 miles an hour. Any mistake a person makes is going to basically result in instant death. When you're walking along the frontage roads, it's different because the cars are not moving as quickly. They're moving at maybe 25 to 30 miles an hour. And there's just less traffic. When it's just you and some other driver on the road, he has the time to see you, he has the time to react to you, and it's just you and that other driver. He or she or whoever they are. When there's more drivers on the road, the drivers just will not necessarily swerve out of their way for you as a pedestrian. And that's particularly true in a very, very well-trafficked route. My honest recommendation is that it would be better to go literally around. That is to say, to go from Petaluma to Pengrove, to Cotati, to Rohnert Park, to Santa Rosa, then walk through Annandale, and then come down into Sonoma. Because, as far as I'm aware, I think that's a less well-traveled route, and I believe that there's more safety in that route. I can understand people who are saying it's like that's so far out of the way, but I think right now there is no pedestrian route over Sonoma Mountain. There's no connection between Jack London State Historic Park and any other trails. So right now, I do think it makes sense. I do think that particular route makes sense. Going through Petaluma from that particular church, there's various, I think, there's the Lynch Creek Trail that, can take a person, to the other side of town, and then over here is St. James Church, and that's the other church in Petaluma. But right now, there's also the multi-use path here that goes from Lakeville and also crosses under the freeway, and then that puts you out actually on North McDowell Boulevard. Petaluma Boulevard North, well-trafficked, but there's no sidewalk. I've walked Petaluma Boulevard North going north to south. Going south to north, I don't think it would... I don't know how it would look exactly, but I don't recommend it. Corona Road, there's no sidewalk along here. The city of Petaluma might build a sidewalk in the future, but right now, as of July 2024, there's no sidewalk. I haven't walked it yet, and that is something... So basically, you're going to want to walk here, along this particular path to get to North McDowell. And if you went to St. James, you'd come along Sonoma Mountain Parkway, and then they both kind of intersect here at where the post office is. This rail line here, in the future, there's going to be a multi-use path here that will run to Pengrove. But it just hasn't been completed right now. Right now, if you did want to go to Pengrove, you would take North McDowell Boulevard. Around here, where this section North McDowell Boulevard cuts off, it's at the very northern end of Petaluma. This is where the sidewalk ends. Again, one would have to be walking along the side of the road until you get to Pengrove. That said, there's a... the side of the road here, there's usually... people from Pengrove, living in Pengrove, often walk to Petaluma, and so there are pathways that they've been walking on. It isn't impossible to walk there, but there is no sidewalk, so it is one of those things where it's like it's an unofficial system. From Pengrove, I've walked Petaluma Hill Road to East Railroad Avenue, but this is a very well-traveled... Well, I guess both of these are very well-traveled routes. I think Old Redwood Highway North, I think, has a better... what would you call it? Not a pathway, but more areas along the side of the road to walk along. And it is possible, you only really have to make it to Fern Avenue, and then you can get onto Willow. From there, it's just a short bit on East Railroad Avenue, walking by the side of the road to pick up the SMART trail. The other possibility, of course, is to just stay on Willow and then on Eucalyptus. Here, the sidewalk starts up again, and then, you're making your way down to downtown Katati. Either way, going on the SMART trail, that will take you pretty much directly to where the SMART station is in Katati. The main reason you'd want to be in downtown Katati is because that is where St. Joseph Roman Catholic Church is. Depending on when you're here, I think later in the day, there's usually, depending on when you're here, there's usually, I think, an exposition of the Blessed Sacrament from the south side of the church. And then I think later in the evening, it's usually moved indoors. In this particular instance, I will say West Katati Avenue has a sidewalk. There's no sidewalk here along St. Joseph Way. And it is possible, there's a number of paths here that will take you north. Yeah, it will take you north to Rohnert Park Expressway. So far, this is about where I've walked. There are... Going north would be areas that I biked, but I haven't walked yet, so... There is the SMART path here that takes you to Golf Course Drive. And then there is a frontage road, Roberts Lake Road, that goes northward. I haven't walked this yet. I assume there should be some sort of way to walk along the side of it as it turns into Santa Rosa Avenue. Usually when I'm going northwards, I'm taking Petaluma Hill Road when I'm going by bike. The Catholic Church here would be St. Elizabeth Seton, which is on Snyder Lane. So that is also something to be aware of, that it's like, yeah, if you're coming in here, it's like, yeah, you can visit the church here, and then I think the optimal route would be to take East Katati Avenue and then Snyder Lane to get to the next one. That said, I haven't walked along Santa Rosa Avenue yet. I would assume this is an easier place for walking than Petaluma Hill Road, but I could be wrong in that. Once you get to... As you walk along Santa Rosa Avenue, there's no... At some point, you have basically like an unofficial sidewalk, and then at some point the sidewalk starts up again for Santa Rosa. I think by Yolanda or Kanawha, then there is a sidewalk again. Yeah, from there... Yeah, you'd want to keep following Santa Rosa Avenue as it goes inward. And then there's the question of where you want to go. It is possible to go over to, I think here. Yeah, it's going to be here. St. Rose Church is over here on B Street. So it's possible to take, to follow Santa Rosa Avenue to the courthouse, and then jog along and then take B Street to visit that particular church. The other possibility is to take Sonoma Avenue, and there's a sidewalk here, and that takes you to St. Eugene Cathedral. This is the cathedral for the Diocese of Sonoma. And over here is the Carrillo Adobe, and this is the place where people have talked about this. Archaeologists have identified the site as being the place where there would have been a 22nd California mission. And for that reason, I do think that there is something to this site. Definitely it's worth going to the cathedral, I think. Just to see one of the great religious sites of the North Bay. From there, I do think that the sidewalk continues onward along Montgomery, and then it's possible to get into Howarth Park. Howarth Park, Spring Lake, and Tryon Annandale. So you have basically a series of 3 parks. So you're off the road. It's possible to follow Annandale all the way to here. I've never been there, but from there, then it's possible to then get into Lawndale, and then you're by Highway 12. There are people who do walk this route as part of the... I believe they call it the Camino de Sonoma, so it's a series of routes that links the mission in Sonoma with the cathedral in Santa Rosa and continues to the Russian church at Fort Ross. But yeah, I think from Lawndale, I've biked Sonoma Highway, and as far as I remember, I do think that there are unofficial walking paths along the sides of the highway where it's like it's wide enough that you can walk. It's not paved, but it's wide enough that you can walk and you don't have to worry about being run over. And that basically continues down south from Kenwood and kind of slowly takes you in to Fetters Hot Springs Agua Caliente. I think here is where the sidewalk begins again. And then just heading south. Once you get to Verano, then there is an off-street path, and that finally takes you to Sonoma State Historic Park, and that is Mission San Francisco Solano. From there, just getting back to Petaluma, there's a bus that can be picked up there, and then the bus, will take you back on 116 to Petaluma. That bus is the only form of transportation, the only form of public transportation out of Sonoma. I mean, there's another bus, obviously, that goes north on 12 to Santa Rosa, but yeah. The bus lines, that's the only way to get into and out of Sonoma if you're going on public transportation. There used to be a bus between Sonoma and Napa that ran, I believe it was closed during the COVID years. And as far as I know, that bus line's never been restarted. You might notice that there is a rail line that does run to Shellville and then over to the Napa Junction. This rail line it exists, and I think all the way to here, to the Napa River, everything here is owned by SMART, Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit. But right now with SMART, all the funding is going towards, completing what they promised, which was to go north. To go north to Cloverdale. Once they have a complete line going to Cloverdale, then they will look east to do this route. Or at least the section of this route that they own. That said, that is something in the future. It's possible that in the future there could be a multi-use path along the side of the rail line, but we don't know what that's going to look like. It's also possible that the county of Sonoma will have a multi-use path going by the side of 12. But these are all things in the future. Right now, there just is limited infrastructure. And the route can be complicated. Unless you live in an area, it's hard to figure out exactly how to move through the landscape. And so that's part of the reason why the number of people who've completed the California Mission Trail is only about 40 or 50 people a year. There's no custodian for the trail. The closest to it would be the California Missions Trail website, and even in that case, the guy who runs it is based in Santa Barbara, and he just from Santa Barbara, from the trail really cannot be managed from one single point. The more I've learned just walking along it and biking along the entire route is that from one single point you just can't figure out everything you need to know. Yeah, there's no custodian for it. There's interest from the bishop and the archbishop, so in the case of the North Bay, the bishop in Santa Rosa and the archbishop in San Francisco. However, when I wrote my bishop regarding the route for the trail, I wrote my bishop over a year ago. I never received a response either from him, and only a limited response from my pastor. There just isn't... I don't think that there's anyone... Nothing is organized right now from the level of the diocese with regard to pilgrimage trails. Even though this is probably the premier pilgrimage trail in the United States, I would say, there just is limited infrastructure, things don't connect, there isn't always a sidewalk, and there's really just no one or no set of people, as far as I'm aware, trying to put it together. Um, it's possible that there's people at the churches, at local churches, who are trying to do things, and I'm just not aware of them. But basically, the trail would require people to, various sets of people to work together to try to get um, various sections, I think, paved, so that, people, people in a wheelchair, or just people in general, to make it easier to make the journey. The other bit as well is just the question of how to go to Sonoma. Historically, the route people take, by automobile is 37, 121, and then 12, and then they're in Sonoma. When the California Missions Trail was kind of, I guess, when El Camino Real was first conceived back in the 1880s, it was conceived by a number of women's groups in Southern California who I believe envisioned the trail as being something for people on bicycles and people on horseback. As time went on and the automobile gained prevalence, El Camino Real turned into first a road and then a major system of highways. In some ways, El Camino Real is kind of the first. It is kind of like the first real road, major road in California that was used. And even just to mark El Camino Real, that's one of the reasons why AAA, the American Automobile Association, came up with their first maps. That would have been, I think, in the 1920s, in order to guide drivers from mission to mission. So, yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not easy to tell people, I think you should go up to Santa Rosa in order to get to Sonoma, as in terms of walking, but that is what I recommend. It is possible to bike from Petaluma to Sonoma. However, I will also say, given how heavily trafficked the route is, be aware that you're biking about, 4 feet away from traffic moving at 50 miles an hour. You just have to be aware of that. The other bit as well is, here, if you're making these left turns, there's no signal crossings. There's no thing you can, there's no button you can press. You basically have to wait for the cars to kind of part, and then make your move on the bicycle. Or you have to do lane splitting and go in between the cars. It's not fun. I've done it, but it's not. Unless you're an experienced cyclist, I don't recommend it. There's just a lot of infrastructure that's missing. Even here, going between where Petaluma ends and Petaluma Adobe State Park, there's no sidewalk here. It's possible to basically walk along the side of the road, even though there's a state of California Department of Parks and Recreation office. There's a state government office here. There is no sidewalk here. There is no signal crossing here. There is no sidewalk here either. There's just a fence with cacti. You basically have to walk along the side of the road to pick up the road, and then you can walk into the adobe. Even though this is just such an important part of Petaluma history, and even though Casa Grande Road, like this road here, leads in a very straight line to the marina. And this is the Embarcadero. This would have been the Embarcadero for General Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo when he was, using that as his rancho. So you would have had the Embarcadero here on the Petaluma River, and then this road, which just means Big House Road, which goes to where the rancho was. But yes, even though historically this was such an important route, at the present time there is no infrastructure even over this small distance here. It's something people in Petaluma are aware of whenever it gets brought up. But that said, building infrastructure here has to go to the county. And, the county offices are in Santa Rosa. So right now there is a difficulty where it's like, Sonoma County is big. I mean, it's not a small county. But from the perspective of Santa Rosa, it can be easy for people to forget about the farther regions of the county. Now, there are resources for finding your way. Obviously the main resource, so you have SMART, you do have a map of the pathway system, as well as the gaps in the system. You have, the Marin County Bicycle Coalition map, and so you do have an idea of what the routes are, how to travel by bike or on foot, so you don't get lost going north to south. But all in all, yeah, the infrastructure really doesn't exist fully yet. There's also the question of whether the trail should align itself with the parish churches, or whether it makes sense to just give people the most direct route. I haven't contacted the parish church pastors yet regarding who would be interested in having pilgrims visit their church. But that is another element to consider. Another thing to consider is, obviously, once the route gets formalized, then the question is of hotels and being interested in the route. In Spain, along the Camino de Santiago, you have a certain number of pilgrimage hostels, as well as restaurants that specifically serve meals designed for the pilgrims. in theory, once everything gets figured out along the whole route, I mean, there could be, right now, there's only about 40 or 50 people walking per year. In the future, we could see hundreds of people, thousands of people making the journey. My personal belief is that there will have to be guides. I've walked, from Rohnert Park to San Francisco in stages, so I have a pretty complete idea of, well, not complete, but probably closer to complete than anyone else I can think of, idea of how to guide people along this route. But in general, there's a lot of work to be done. It's unclear exactly how things are going to come together. In terms of infrastructure, there would be things either at the city level or at the county level in both Marin and Sonoma in terms of trying to get the route into better condition. But yeah, that's how things are working right now.